All right, everyone. Welcome into National Signing Day 2023 right here at the Voice of College Football. For you recruiting junkies, you're at it 24/7, 365. But for the rest of us, this is the day. And since the early signing period was implemented, about 4 or 5 years ago now, in December, this has become National Signing Day. For us old timers, we still think of February as National Signing Day, the first Wednesday of February. That will be still another signing day when about 10 to 15% of the prospects will sign in February. But this has become the National Signing Day. Most of the commitments, most of the student athletes want to get it over with. They want to make that commitment. They want to sign on the dotted line, send in the fax. Yes, we are still sending in faxes. They want to send in the fax, get it done, make their choice, have it set. And for many of them, more and more each and every year, going the early enrollment route and getting on campus, actually to the point where they are participating in bowl practices and college football playoff practices now for many of these early enrollees. So that's also a portion of this that has to be considered. Of course, also heavily factoring into recruiting season has been the transfer portal that we've reported on each and every day here at the Voice of College Football. So check out the specific team channels because that's where we focus most of our transfer portal coverage. We posted videos concerning Florida State, Miami, and Michigan just on Tuesday concerning those transfer situations there and some of their new additions to the roster there at Florida State, Miami, and Michigan. We had planned on having Georgia football coverage here at 11 a.m. Eastern time, but unfortunately that has been pushed back to Thursday. So either late tonight on Wednesday, National Signing Day, or into Thursday, we will bring you your Georgia National Signing Day report. And we have a guest coming on here, Melissa Treebwasser, coming on at noon Eastern time to give us the lowdown on TCU and Sonny Dykes' first full recruiting cycle at TCU. In the meantime, we want to get everyone caught up, and we also want to rely on all of you. Let's rely on all of you to give me recruiting nuggets and updates out there as I believe the national show on ESPN starts at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So we also are going to be live here at 2 p.m. Eastern time, monitoring the updates there, monitoring the updates online. Of course, we will be accepting and we will be thankful for all the information that you can provide us here at the Voice of College Football with your various team updates as we try to track every team, and we can only do that with your help. So if you have any nuggets in regards to any late breaking news, flips, and otherwise, certainly send those in and keep us updated here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. We will open up the phone lines, and I will only give priority, though, to some of our media guests that are coming in at some point, but that doesn't start until noon Eastern time. So for the roughly next 45 minutes, we can open up the phone lines, and otherwise I'm just going to be tracking online to try to get as many updates as possible. We see Georgia has received a commitment and then a signing from Gulliver Prep cornerback Daniel Harris, a top 250 player in the country, top 20 cornerback out of Florida, Gulliver Prep in Miami. Daniel Harris has committed and now signed with the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart looking for a number 1 class. Right now, according to 247 Sports, Georgia at number 2 behind Alabama. Of course, from 2008 until pretty much through 2022, Alabama has posted almost number 1 classes exclusively, excluding a couple years. But otherwise, Alabama has owned the number 1 spot in recruiting. Georgia has been right there. Kirby Smart is also looking for 7 consecutive top 3 classes. 7 consecutive top 3 classes. So again, we will appreciate your updates as you scan your team, your conference, and everything that you have available to you as we try to keep updated on everything. Again, our first scheduled guest is coming up at noon Eastern time, Melissa Treeblosser from Frogs Today on TCU. In the meantime, I'm going to drop the link in the chat for you folks to jump on if you would like. Otherwise, we're going to be searching for all sorts of updates. I know that Michigan got a key commit and signing today as well. Let's see what we've got here. Michigan Rick's here. Also, Traveling Fools, good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Of course, go Bucks. Did somebody leave Michigan this morning? I know that they got a late commit, and we're going to track that. There it is. Michigan Rick, there it is. That's the one that I saw, number 16 wide receiver, Karmello English. So good get for Jim Harbaugh. I believe that's a top 100 player in the nation. So let's get familiar with one Karmello English. And then we'll bring in our first caller. Karmello English, yes, just committed. And we don't know if we've got the official signing, but committed to Michigan, 5'11", 175. 18th rated wide receiver in the country. Michigan Rick's got number 16, but number 15 in the composite. Number 25, according to 247 Sports, Phoenix City, Alabama. Great stuff there. Stats from last season. So this is not 2022. These are 2021 stats. Caught 70 passes, over 1,000 yards, 1,059, 18 receiving touchdowns. He had visited most recently Auburn and Kentucky, but we've got one Karmello English, number 16 rated wide receiver in the country, to Michigan. We've got our first caller coming in. That weird scientist.
Hi.
Hello. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, so you're calling about National Signing Day. Do you have anything for us?
Do you think anybody's going to go to Georgia Tech?
If anyone's going to go to Georgia Tech, well, obviously they've done an amazing job with transfers over the last few days, getting a couple from Texas A&M, Haynes King included. Don't have any info on Georgia Tech, and don't have anyone lined up for Georgia Tech. So we're going to be here a number of windows throughout the day with a number of beat writers from various teams, but don't have anything lined up with Georgia Tech. Do you have any info on Georgia Tech, or did you have anyone you were anticipating flipping to Georgia Tech?
No, but Tyson Pumachani, or whatever his name is.
Yep.
Do you think he's going to stay?
Well, he is just considering that they just picked up Haynes King. Well, there are too many quarterbacks for all these teams for there not to be competition somewhere. So unless he's looking to be a definite starter and go to the group of five, then he's going to have to battle it out for that starting spot. And that's going to be difficult because Haynes King has obviously won a starting job at Texas A&M. But I don't know what his priorities are. But if he wants an easier path to a starting job, then he's going to leave. But if he wants to fight it out with Haynes King, then that's what we're looking at. Bye. Anything else? Okay. We appreciate him stopping by. Georgia Tech fan. Love the Georgia Tech fans. We don't have too many, I don't believe, here at the Voice of College Football. So we would love to have more Georgia Tech fans. Again, Karmello English commits to Michigan, and he had been leaning Auburn at one point out of, Phoenix City, Alabama. That's close to Auburn, is it not? But he goes to Michigan as a top 200 prospect. Oh, my goodness. Erica's here, coming off that bone-crushing news about Caden Proctor yesterday. But you know what? Life goes on. Everybody loses commits. It is not the end of the world, and you keep moving along. Again, we will accept. We did have a Georgia guest lined up for right now. That was a scheduling issue. My bad. We've got Melissa Treebwasser coming on at noon. And then from 2 to 5 today, Eastern time, we are going to have tons of National Signing Day reports. We've got all sorts of folks lined up to come in with National Signing Day reports, both from 2 to 5 today, 2 to 5 Eastern, and then also later at 8:30 Eastern tonight. We've got just dozens and dozens of folks lined up. And we got Dave calling us. Dave, what's going on today?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine. You got me scurrying to look up Minnesota's class right now.
Probably. I just saw a little bit of them. I have no idea who we got. To be honest with you, I just don't think the signing day is that important as it used to be now that you have an IL and kids going left and right to whatever school they want to go to.
Well, yeah.
With the transfer portal.
It's not as important as it once was because, number one, yes, we've got better players or more proven players. I shouldn't call them better players. They're not better players. Actually, if you look at the transfer portal, like I looked at the rankings the other day on 247 Sports, and the quality of player isn't that great. Like the best players in college football generally are not moving. We're not talking about the high-end players that are moving for the most part. We're talking about depth pieces for most teams.
Yeah, and that's the thing I want to talk to you about. Do you think with the transfer portal that the Big Ten West will be a lot more competitive than it was last year?
Well, I have hopes that the Big Ten West is going to be more competitive based on those two coaching additions at Nebraska and Wisconsin, first and foremost. But based on the transfer portal, well, the opportunity is open there for everyone, but there's a greater opportunity to improve quickly. Like Lincoln Riley showed us, like Mel Tucker showed us 2 years ago, there's a greater and easier opportunity to get better quicker than having to wait for recruiting cycle after recruiting cycle after development. Yeah, you bring in ready-made guys that have already played substantial football elsewhere. You can get better quickly. And I got a lot of faith in Luke Fickell in particular, but also Matt Rule that they know what they're doing. So I would expect those teams to improve considerably. And just a note here that Rick is making, Michigan Rick on the screen. This is a good sign right here for Minnesota that you've got no drama. All of your commits have signed. They're all signed. All 21 already signed. And I'm not seeing that out of other teams where there's usually 5, 6, 7 guys that, they're holding out, they're waiting, they want to see if maybe they have other options or they're having second thoughts. But all 21 for PJ Fleck signed in a class that's ranked 36th in the country right now.
Yeah. I have another question. Was Emmitt Smith's son considering Minnesota at one point? He ended up going to Stanford. I know that.
Well, I heard that, but I don't have any other.
I saw a Minnesota hat or a side of a hat that looked maroon and gold. So
yeah,
I didn't know if it was Minnesota.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't have any other like inside information about what Emmitt Smith's son was considering. I don't know.
Yeah. Shoot. Yeah, but recruiting is always weird. Look at Texas A&M and look at what you add on the transfer portal. Look at Texas A&M, number one team in recruiting last year, and it's pretty much now gone. They all left.
So that's your classic example right there. They're not the norm, but yes, the number one recruiting class from just last season is no longer the number one recruiting class. It's the 25th class, the 30th class, whatever it is. It's nowhere close because most of those guys have bolted, or a large portion of them have bolted.
I think they lost like 18 kids.
Yeah, I should actually do a video on that and really look through each one and see where they went and how many they lost and try to re-rank that class. Yeah, that's an interesting thing right there. Their number one player is still there, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I was just curious. Their number two player is still there. Their top three players are still there.
Mm-hmm.
Their top four players still there. So anyway, that's where they stand right now.
So, what do you think of the bowl games so far?
The bowl game so far. Well, shoot, I miss every prediction. So I'll tell you they're unpredictable for one thing, which is fun. They're typically unpredictable, but because of all these opt-outs coming up, we haven't really seen too many yet. I enjoy the bowl games. I had fun last night. I wasn't able to catch either bowl game live, but I recorded both of them and watched them late night, and they were entertaining. The Liberty Toledo game went right down to the wire. That was a fun game.
Yeah, that was very fun. To have it be decided on a 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
And I will, man, everybody knows Toledo's going to run the ball, and Liberty just didn't stop them at all.
Yeah.
It was like they had 3 minutes left, and they couldn't
Yes.
even stop them.
Yeah.
Wow, that was just amazing.
See,
It was just where's your defensive coordinator on that one?
yeah, you got to load up. Neither team could throw the ball effectively. Well, the weather conditions weren't good, and neither team's a good passing team. Well, Toledo, fairly good. Anyway, that you get those two teams together on that field, and you're trying to get the ball back in the last 3 minutes. You sell out on the run to try to get stopped and get the ball back. But that is a perfect example of that was not a pretty football game by any stretch, but it was just fun. There were turnovers, there were sloppy plays and mistakes made all over the place, and you had a huge play made by Liberty to try to get back in the game when they threw that little halfback option pass for a touchdown to give them a chance. And yeah, it was a great game.
Well, I'm predicting that the MAC probably, I would say 5 of their bowl games. That conference has always been a very solid conference when it comes to bowl games lately.
Well, very lately, Dave, because the MAC traditionally,
very lately,
awful,
very lately
bowl record.
Yeah.
Yes, recently the MAC has done much better. Yes.
Yes. But well, I'll talk to you later.
Appreciate you being here, Dave.
At the end of the year, and I'll have you continue with your show. If you have any more people ready, I'd like to listen to them. But
I appreciate it, Dave.
But
thanks for being here.
Okay.
All right,
bye-bye.
Dave. All right, we'll keep it going here at the Voice of College Football. And again, if you in particular, folks out there, have any updates on your particular team's conferences, anything you can offer here as we try to track the entire nation at the same time. So that's difficult for one guy here. I would appreciate any kind of nuggets we can get on flips, commits, any breaking news out there. All right, we got Sports Talk 101 on the line.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Not much. I've been tracking Michigan and the commits. I was want to talk about so far where you thought of the recruits that Michigan has landed last few days.
Michigan. Well, we were just talking about Karmello English here just a few minutes ago. He is a wide receiver, top 15 to 20 wide receiver out of Alabama, who was leaning toward Auburn at one point out of Phoenix City, Alabama. And Jim Harbaugh has flipped him on National Signing Day. I don't know that he has yet signed we see that Michigan has signed 20 players, and they have 2 other players out there. That would be English and Zach Marshall, who have yet to sign, but it looks like a really strong class for Michigan, considering where they were. Now, not really strong class based on Michigan standards, but strong based on where they were months ago with this class. And of course, they got 2 Indiana transfers over the last 24 hours as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to talk about is the transfer portal, what Michigan has done and being number one. And what do you think of the guys that Michigan has picked up between the Coastal Carolina, the edge they picked up, the 2 guys from IU, the bunch of the O-line, offensive linemen they picked up? I want your thoughts on those players.
Absolutely. So we posted some videos on these guys. Josiah Stewart is the guy that intrigues me. He had some really productive seasons with Coastal Carolina off the edge. And, edge, corner, offensive tackle, obviously quarterback, wide receiver are your premium positions. So, you get your game wrecking type guys off the edge, and they're the guys that can affect games, change games, and make a difference. So I don't know if he's going to do that at Michigan. Nobody knows against tougher competition, but all seems well. And obviously they've evaluated his tape and feel great about adding him.
All right. Man, because I'm looking at the Channel 24/7 Sports and look at the number 212. His name is Jerry Hill. He's a cornerback from Illinois, number 2 in the state, 212 nationally. He looks like he's 100% Michigan. Hopefully, Michigan. He looks like a 4-star guy. Hopefully we can land him. And another question I have for you, Mark, is do you think Michigan can land some 5-star players will come to Michigan in the next few hours or weeks?
Any 5-star players? Well, Nicholas Harper's out there as a potential. I know that he's going to announce, I believe, sometime this afternoon is what I saw. So he would be the one guy that would be out there that I know that they've had a good run at and built relationships with, but he's considering 3 or 4 teams, and we'll just have to wait. He's the only one that I know of that they're deep on. If you look at, let's look at the 2023 commits. We only have 35 to 40. We only have 35 to 45 stars. And let me find them here. And so who's not committed? I don't know that there are. So we've got, so he's the first one on the board that I just mentioned. Nicholas Arbor is not committed, 16th rated player in the country. 247 Sports has a lean to South Carolina, but that's not anything official, certainly. And then, the next 2 5-stars, Deuce Robinson out of Arizona and James Smith out of Alabama. I don't believe that they're in the running for them. You've got Quay Russo, an edge out of Alabama, and Desmond Ricks out of Florida, cornerback, who's leaning LSU. And for 5 stars, that's all of them. So again, the first guy I mentioned there, Nicholas Arbor, would be the guy that could be a possibility to Michigan out of Washington, D.C.
What about this guy, Matayo Uiagalelei? He looks like he's 1%, looks like number 17 edge.
Okay.
Looks like he's 100 going towards Oregon. Do you think Michigan could land him?
Okay, you're saying the 17th rated edge rusher?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the story is on him.
Looks like he has Oregon, USC, Alabama, Arizona, and Ohio State on his college list according to 24/7 Sports. So I don't know if Michigan can flip him or not.
Well, it certainly doesn't appear so
Yeah.
based on that.
And do you think I think obviously the ones that are not committed yet, but planning committed, obviously 100% towards these certain schools. Do you think Michigan could flip a lot of these players?
Which players are we talking about? Now, what happens down the road? Who knows? Look at the transfer portal right now. Michigan's going to be flipping all sorts of players. So is everybody else over the next couple of years. If you're talking about the current 2023 class, again, I think we're looking at how many they have 20 signed, 2 hard commits. That's 22 and 7 transfers coming in. I don't know how many they lost off the top of my head, but they're at 22 right now. So I would expect that they're going to get another 3 to 4. Everybody's classes are going to be a little bit larger because there's a 1-year dispensation of sorts that allows them to sign extra players. So everyone's going to have large classes. So I would expect Michigan, and you're not talking to somebody who's a Michigan recruiting expert by any stretch of the imagination, to get 3 or 4 or 5 more players in this class.
Right. And look, Michigan lost, we know Michigan lost 3 stands for Eric All, coming to Iowa, and obviously now Alan Bowman is the other player just entered the transfer not too long ago. Any thoughts where he will go?
Alan Bowman, I expected him to be a bit more of a factor once he signed at Michigan. At that point, he was the quarterback, of course, on the roster that had the most experience, and we didn't know that Cade McNamara was going to get his shot against Rutgers and light it up and then become a factor. But he came to Michigan with, I believe, 33 career touchdown passes and had played rather well in the Big 12. So I don't know that Alan Bowman can seriously compete for a starting job in the Power 5, but I would think that there would be a lot of group of 5 opportunities for him to win a job.
Yeah, and speaking of transfer portal, a lot of players still not committed in the in the transfer portal yet. But obviously, we have number one with a lot of commits in the transfer. Who in the transfer portal do you think Michigan will likely get in terms of transfer portal next few, before the transfer portal closes?
Yeah, so they made this interesting move with Jack Tuttle. Because he's not going to obviously unseat J.J. McCarthy, but they get an experienced backup quarterback there. They love tight ends, and of course, Schoonmaker is yet to announce what he's doing, but anticipating that he's going to move on and Colston Loveland's going to be the starter, they pick up another tight end there. And otherwise, they went heavy along the lines. So I think they've done what they're looking for with 2 additions in the interior offensive line, because they've got some losses there. And then also Miles Hinton at tackle. They have yet to add any secondary players. Their wide receiver room's deep and nobody has left. I would expect, just based on that review, that we could see them add back 7 on defense.
Right, and plus the guys who might lose this year to the NFL draft as well. Losing, but I think what's his name? The back Mac Moore's probably, I think he's going to go draft. I think I know you're seeing he might go draft a lot of guys to draft. And yeah, hopefully, especially with the playoffs coming up, Michigan, being in the playoffs, I think that has some impact on these commits too. Like, okay, look, with the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, with all the injuries happening, I'm not sure. But I'm gonna say something else. I was gonna say. I had a quick question for the playoffs. Michigan's matchup against TCU on next week. I know it's not Sunday, but I just want your take on one question about that game. Two questions. I feel this is a mismatch game between TCU and Michigan, partly because Michigan, it's one heavy, and with weeks to prepare. What's the TCU defense versus Michigan offense? Do you expect Alabama to run the ball? Do you think TCU can stop that one game?
Interesting question. So I posted a video the other day running through the numbers of total offense, scoring offense, yards per play, pass efficiency, those sorts of things. So, TCU plays in a league that is considered to be pass heavy. I think that's a bit of a misnomer anymore, but still, the pass offenses in the Big 12 do rank rather high. And TCU's pass efficiency defense is really strong. Its overall numbers don't look good because they've had to defend a lot of pass attempts, but their pass efficiency rating is really good. But to your point, their yards per play against the rush is not great. And of course, Michigan might have the best running game in college football. So that tells me that it all depends on what type of game this becomes. Michigan is going to try to, of course, hang on to the ball and score in 6 and 8 minute drives. And TCU wants to score quickly and will probably take some shots from outside the 30 or 40 yard line because their red zone offense compared to Michigan's red zone defense might be an issue for TCU trying to, in a smaller box, try to move Michigan out of the way to score points. I see this as a fairly competitive game. I don't see, I know that Michigan has a definite advantage up front, both sides of the ball. There's no question about that. They're just bigger bodies. And TCU, though, presents a challenge with Max Duggan that I don't think Michigan has faced yet in that type of running quarterback and that type of running threat. Talia Tagovailoa is elusive. He can run. He doesn't want to. He's a guy that wants to stay in the pocket, wants to stay on script. And Peyton Thorne can move around, but Michigan is facing the toughest, most willing running quarterback than they've faced in I don't know how long.
Right. Yeah. It should be a good game. I'm excited for this game, and hopefully we can have hopefully by the time the game comes around, healthy team. Make sure all the players are healthy for the game. But in terms of, I will go back to the transfer one last question. Is that we're right now ranked number 18. Do you think Michigan will move up to like top 15 or top 10 in the next? Do you think they can move up in top 10 or top 15, given where they're sitting right now?
Well, let's see who's in front of them, because that's going to impact that. Excuse me, more than anything is who's in front of them and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be too concerned about it, where exactly they rank here, because it's not going to be a stellar class.
Right.
It is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
We're sitting at 18. Ironically, there's TCU sitting at number 17. When I checked just about an hour ago, TCU was actually at 19. They've moved up 2 spots. So they were at 20 commits and they've picked up a few players. So actually TCU has jumped them and maybe somebody else has taken a step back. But, look at this, Sports Talk. Consider that even though Michigan's 18th in the country, their average player ranking is 88.6. And so I'm trying to think That looks like that's about 18th as well. So let's see here. Is there anyone behind them with a higher player ranking? Actually, Florida State does. And Arkansas is close. And Utah is slightly better. And Auburn's close. So, they're ranked about where they should be. And
I'm just happy.
they've made a lot of ground up in the last several months.
Yeah, I'm happy with the 22 commits we have, and hopefully we can get those, like I said, English and the other guy to sign with us. I think we'll probably sign with them in the next few days. But also, let's be number one transfer portal and pick up those guys in the transfer portal is a big help to us. And I know Ninth Sundays come again in February. As that day comes in February, between now and February, obviously, I expect also Michigan to sign more players on the actual signing day in February. But it looks. I have one more question actually. And in February, between now and February, do you expect Michigan to sign more players between early signing day and actual signing day?
Well, again, we would have to have a Michigan guy on here, and we have several times to see what their closing number is going to be in terms of players. They have 22 right now. They got 20 signed. They got 2 committed. If they sign, they got 22. I don't know what that number is going to land on, but I would expect it to be another 3 or 4.
That's also thinking to at least 3 or 4 more commits now, within by the time after Ninth signing day.
Yeah.
And one more question. This is not from Michigan, but why? I noticed Texas looking at this rankings, and Texas had 16 commits for Texas A&M, and just curious why that is.
Why Texas A&M only has 17 commits?
Yeah, 16 and 17. Yeah.
I've been watching that for months. I see Florida State's only got 15. And then with all the losses they've had in the transfer portal, they've had more losses than gains in the transfer portal. Yeah, that is a curious number. These numbers are more difficult to track than they ever have been because of the transfer portal and also because of all of these 5th, 6th, 7th year eligibility situations with all these players. So it's impossible to see what numbers they should be at right now. Well, I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one.
And have a great day.
All right. Yes, Max Duggan is a beast. Jay Shipes, good to see you today. Again, we are going to be here through at least the noon hour. We've got Melissa Treebwasser coming on from Frogs Today to talk up the TCU class that is ranked 1 spot ahead of Michigan at number 17 in the country with 23 commits right now. And any nuggets, information, breaking news, updates you can give us, we will certainly appreciate those as we are trying to track everything at the same time here at the Voice of College Football. You really want to be with us between 2 and 5 today, 2 p.m. to 5. Maybe I'll come on early. We'll see. But during the bulk of the afternoon, we're going to be here live, and we've got tons of media lined up to jump on and give us reports on every team we can possibly get to. On top of that, at 5 Eastern, we've got our Michigan Live show. We've got Florida State Live at 6. We've got Miami Live at 7. And then we're going to jump back on here at 8:30 and go live tonight and bring on more media guests to give us National Signing Day reports on all those teams throughout the day. Oh, man, Joe, no caffeine for me. And that's not like some kind of health concern or health decision I've made. I just, no coffee. Never got into coffee. Just didn't do it. Just did not do it. All right. So our latest here is still an Alabama class that's number 1. And Georgia's at 2. Miami is all the way up to number 3. We've got our Miami show coming up, 7 o'clock Eastern time tonight, 7 Eastern on the Miami channel with Cam Underwood, State of the U. Miami at number 3. He is going to be jacked up about that. Texas 4, LSU 5, Notre Dame 6. So Ohio State has taken a tumble in recent weeks at number 7. Oklahoma 8, Tennessee 9, Clemson at 10. And one mover on the day, TCU up to number 17. Edwin Joseph to Florida State. The Seminoles are currently at number 19 in the country with 15 commits. Let's find out a little bit more about one Edwin Joseph. So we got Edwin Joseph, athlete, 6 foot 178 out of Hollywood. 74th rated player in the state of Florida, according to 247 Sports. Florida State commit. Had 27 offers. And let's see here. That's his 2021 season, not 22. Caught 35 passes, 4 touchdowns. So is he going to play wide receiver? It appears. Anytime I see athlete, it's typically wide receiver or defensive back. And so there we go. Edwin Joseph commits to Florida State. Thanks for the update there, BT Bat. Yes, Florida State's on a roll. Florida State, just the season they had, nobody could have expected, reasonably could have expected a better outcome to this season. No, they lost 3 consecutive games, and that's when it looked like they weren't quite up to that upper tier in the ACC, but they are. They're probably the second best team in the ACC, and they've got a returning quarterback in Jordan Travis, and really, despite everyone's losing players, everyone's losing significant talent off their roster to the NFL draft, anybody that's a player, but Florida State looks pretty for next season. They lose less than most. Huffer Billy also hates to see that South Carolina's making moves as well. South Carolina is right in that TCU, Michigan, Florida State range as well at number 16, 22 commits, 13 4-stars. Roger Dodger, yes, Super Mario recruiting on point. The game day decisions, Josh Allen is the next Elway. That's a good comparison. I like that one. Yeah, I see that. The broad shoulders, the body frame, the gun, the mobility. Yes. Mark, will Michigan be preseason number 1 next year? Well, you're asking me to predict what other people are going to vote, but they're sure going to be close. Our preseason look. Now, this is a really sketchy thing to do here on December 21st, but we'll give it a shot. Of course, Alabama is going to be extremely high. Georgia is going to be extremely high. Michigan's going to be right there. Bo Nix comes back. Oregon could be pretty high. USC, of course, is going to be extremely high. They'll be in the running for that top 5 range. In the Big 12, boy, I don't know that they're going to have anyone too deep into the top 10. Ohio State's going to take a bit of a ratings tumble, at least to start the season. We'll see if they can prove otherwise, but they're going to take a rankings hit preseason. And I would expect Clemson to take a rankings hit preseason. I would expect Florida State to be a chic pick for a lot of people to challenge for the ACC. So your high risers off the top of my head for next season, preseason rankings, in addition to the usual suspects, Alabama, Georgia, and now Michigan, would be Oregon, South Carolina, Florida State, Penn State, and your teams in decline, at least in terms of preseason rankings, Ohio State. Who knows what anyone's going to do with Texas A&M, LSU on the rise, Texas on the rise. I don't know if Texas is truly on the rise. Their ranking is going to be on the rise. And of course, USC again. All right. VT Bat, thank you so much for that. Edwin Joseph signs with Florida State. Texas A&M's recruiting class is a very odd one here. And you know, our previous caller brought this up concerning Texas A&M's recruiting class from 2022, the famed greatest of all time recruiting class, that maybe it's a bit premature to say it's been completely annihilated. We looked at the top 4 players at Texas A&M. They're all still with Texas A&M from 2022. So that might be an interesting dive to make for a video, is to go through the 2022 Texas A&M class. We'd want to wait until this transfer season has gone through to see where we stand on, I believe it's January 10th or 15th, something in that range. Texas A&M right now is at number 15, 17 commits, 2 5-stars, 9 4-stars, 6 3-stars. So keep this in mind. While Texas A&M is only number 15 in the 247 Sports rankings, their player composite ranking is 91.6. Let me bring this up on screen. So, of course, you need volumes of players. Football's a physical game, and it's a depth game. It's about attrition. However, it's also about quality. And if we look at this, we see that, yes, Alabama's 1. So if we go down to Texas A&M, let's go to Texas A&M right there. So keep this in mind, that while they are 15th in the country, they only have 17 commits. So their average player ranking is 91.64. So that is, excuse me here because I've got to move the screen and I can't see what I'm doing on a different tab. But at 91.64, they are higher than all these teams up to there. Who's that? 92.3 is Florida. So they've got a quality class. And then Texas A&M is better than all these teams here. So really, in terms of quality of player average ranking, Texas A&M has more like the 8th class in the country. They are higher than all those other teams. So we can always keep that in mind as well. Isaac Smith. Normal guy is asking about Isaac Smith. Anybody online that has found anything out about Isaac Smith? We will track him in particular. Now let's talk TCU. We have been talking more TCU football than we've talked in years, and that's a good thing. I believe our guests will agree with me. Melissa, how you doing today?
I am doing great. It's early signing day. TCU's got a top 20 class. You know, can't complain.
I looked at it a couple hours ago, and TCU was at 19, and bam, now they're at 17. They just keep moving up and up and up and up and up. We've
Yeah.
got them with, I believe it's 23 commits, 10 4-stars. So it's looking good for all of you.
Yeah, 23 high school commits, a handful of pretty high impact, highly regarded transfers as well. So TCU's done a really nice job, I think, capitalizing on their first college football playoff appearance, capitalizing on the 12-0 season, all of the individual and team awards and coaching awards that Sonny Dykes has received. I don't think that they've swung and missed too often in this cycle, and it's paying dividends.
All right. So if we go down the board, who stands out to you? Who gets you excited? Of course, we're going to go to the top of the board and everybody gets excited about the players that are the highest ranked. But just based on what you've seen on tape, the people that you trust, that you've talked to, that you really like, who stands out to you?
You know, I think that the thing that's most important is just how well they replenish the secondary. You're going to lose Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. You could potentially lose a couple of the safeties in the backfield. And so they went out and they got some really highly regarded corners and safeties and really, really restocked at the safety position. One that I'm really excited about is Jamel Johnson, who is a 4-star, who's a DFW product. It was a Longhorn commit and lean for a really long time. And so for TCU to be winning battles against Texas right before Texas goes to the SEC, I think that says a lot about how people in state are viewing the program. And to take a highly regarded defensive player from the Longhorns and bring him into the fold under Joe Gillespie, that's a huge deal for the Horned Frogs. And again, that Gary Patterson used to always talk about putting defense around DFW. That's another just local kid that they're keeping home, which is a really, really big deal, obviously. Also super excited about Marcus Deal on the defensive line. I think that TCU got a lot better at putting pressure on the quarterback towards the end of the season. Their last 5 or 6 games, they look like a very different unit. But being able to restock in the trenches and build from the inside out is going to be the key to not just having this successful season, but hopefully building a program that can be successful in the new look Big 12. It's not just a contender, but annually one of the powerhouses in that program. And then everybody loves a skill position player, and the Frogs got a couple really, really good ones. I think that there are quite a few receivers that are going to be a lot of fun, but Jordan Bailey, who's going to play in the slot, he's a smaller guy at 5'9". He's the brother of Amani Bailey. He is going to be a lot of fun. He's just speed on speed on speed. And Cordell Russell is another one who is a bigger wide receiver who kind of is in the mold of the Quentin Johnston that I think could play big dividends. You add that to JoJo Earl, the former 4-star recruit out of Aledo, who played his first 2 seasons at Alabama. And even if you lose Darius Davis, Tay Barber, and Quentin Johnston, there's a lot coming up to be excited about.
Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have a photographic memory on all of TCU's recruiting classes, but they're typically in that 25 to 35 range, somewhere in that range. We're looking at a class that is vying for roughly top 15 status. And usually a big season like this obviously pays dividends quickly, but it's usually more of the next cycle, the next year, And Sonny Dykes, this being his first full cycle, really, he just, got the job and tried to pull together what he could before National Signing Day last year. What do you credit this recruiting haul to?
Well, I think a lot of, what Sonny Dykes has done since he arrived is empower his assistant coaches. He puts a lot of faith in the guys on staff to get the job done, especially in recruiting. I wrote about it earlier this week for Frogs Day, but one of the most important things that he did was he kept Malcolm Kelly, he kept Doug Beecham, and he kept Paul Gonzalez on staff. And those 3 guys not only helped keep last year's class together, but they have been building relationships with these 2023 guys already and are 3 of the most highly respected, well-liked coaches in college football, guys that high school players, high school coaches really like to deal with and have a lot of respect for. And so then you add in Brian Carrington, who recently left for an on-field coaching position to Arizona State, but he had put in a ton of work before he left as well in getting this class together. So I think that Sonny understands modern recruiting, both from a portal perspective and a high school perspective. And so he puts the right amount of emphasis on it. The fact that they were able to continue to get these flips here over the last week, continue to bring in some additional prospects over the last week, host all these visits while they're prepping for the college football playoff. I think it tells you just how important, how much they value recruiting. And so bringing in Tommy Brockemeyer, a 5-star offensive lineman from Alabama, bringing in JoJo Earl, they signed Channing Canada, a JUCO. They've really prioritized, striking while the iron is hot, and they're not afraid to go to high school ranks. They're not afraid to go into the portal in order to fill the holes that are coming. But it is, Sonny Dykes does value recruiting at that highest level. And that's what the best programs do, is they really put an emphasis on that. And I was listening to someone talk about Miami and how they were glad to not make a bowl game because they really needed to put the work in on recruiting. And that's going to pay off for them with a top 5 class too.
Got Melissa Treebwasser on the line from Frogs Today. Get on over there, check out Melissa's work and the rest of the staff there at Frogs Today. You brought up putting a fence around the DFW. It's a unique area. In addition to, you just mentioned South Florida with Miami, Houston, if they get back into the game as a Big 12 player now, Houston, and really Atlanta, but Georgia Tech, you can't keep those kids there. It's very few places that you can just sit where you're at, and you can, not that you don't want to go other places, and then you got to guard against obviously all the other, the SEC schools and the Ohio State's coming into that area. But it's just, there is so much talent in that area that it's obviously a big plus, but it's also, you got to guard against everybody else coming in.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Patterson had always talked about, like I said, putting that fence around DFW. But TCU recruited on a national level. They were signing kids from Virginia. They went into California quite a bit, which also has a great talent base. But Sonny Dykes, when he was at SMU, realized the best pitch that he had to sell was play in front of your family and friends, stay close to home, make an impact in your community. And as we've seen, South Oak Cliff and some of these legacy Dallas schools rise up and win state championships, I think that Dykes has really realized, hey, like, this is more important than ever to keep these kids home. And now I can offer them not only a chance to play close to home, but to play at top flight elite facilities. I mean, TCU's facilities are on par with just about anybody's in the country, not just from a stadium perspective, but from what they do for player performance. They just announced a new $50 million player performance center that's going to be accessible to all athletes. It's going to include more nutrition opportunities, mental health and wellness. I mean, they've really invested in making sure that these student athletes, once they arrive on campus, are going to have every tool accessible to them. And so he's got a pitch he can sell, and now he can also add to that. And oh, by the way, go win the Thorpe Award, go be a Heisman finalist, make the college football playoffs, play for Big 12 championships, play in big time bowl games, have the 9th most watched program in the country this year at your doorstep. I mean, TCU, other than Notre Dame, which is a unique scenario, was far and away the smallest student body and the smallest living alumni base in the top 10 of most watched games this year. And so there's really nothing, other than you can't put the words SEC or Big 10 behind you, there's really nothing else holding TCU back from being a top 15 recruiting entity going forward in the new Big 12 and with the new media deal as well. I mean, it's getting a lot easier to sell TCU. It hasn't really been hard, but it's certainly, you can give these kids every opportunity that they want when it comes to college football right at their doorstep. And the talent, like you said, is there to be able to restock annually and fill the cupboard with kids from within 100-mile radius of the campus.
And I've always felt as though once we went to the matted look and the chrome look, that TCU has some of the killer uniforms with the black and the purple put together.
That, the thing that I always laugh about is every new and, version of the uniform they put out, there's always us old folks going, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
The more we don't like it, the more the kids probably do. And I love those terrible spit blood uniforms. I would die for those things. They're awful and I love them. But yeah, I mean, they've been modernizing the program for a long time. And then, Dykes fills his staff with these young, cool guys who get it and who know how to relate. I mean, the dude told us who he was when he showed up at Amon G. Carter Stadium to announce in a helicopter, like wearing purple Jordans. Like, that's kind of what we do. Is like, oh, things are a little bit different around here right now. And he is authentically relatable in a way that I think is really hard to find in this sport, that that people like him, they respect him. He's a heck of a football coach, and he knows how to hang out and talk to 17, 18-year-old kids, and he takes a personal interest in doing so. He did a lot of in-home visits himself, and you don't see a lot of CEO type head coaches doing that these days.
Melissa, to get back to the granular, Tommy Brockermeyer, Jack Besh, JoJo Earl, Avery Helm. Those are the 4 transfers I'm looking at. I'm very familiar with the top 3.
Yeah, 4 SEC transfers to TCU.
Yeah.
Little TCU. It's crazy.
Exactly. So, it's not some crazy haul, but it looks like they were very specific on getting quality where they need it.
Yeah, and there's still, I think you're going to see, after the playoff game, and I just keep working that playoff word in as much as humanly possible because it's still so weird for me to say it. But after that game, you're definitely going to see some attrition from this roster. Like you said, Sonny Dykes was hired so late in the process last year that he worked with what he had. He did obviously an unbelievable job, but you're going to see some guys who kind of realize their path, probably isn't at TCU. You're going to get some roster spots opening up. And so they're going to be intentional in filling, especially along the offensive and defensive line come February. But yeah, they very specifically targeted, desperately needed a good offensive lineman. This line played far above expectations this year, but you need to strengthen it. You're losing a lot of guys to graduation. And so getting Tommy Brockermeyer, who's a local kid, played at Fort Worth All Saints, was a kid that TCU recruited him and his brother, hard back in the day, didn't work out. But bringing him back is a huge deal. It's a 5-star offensive lineman that has 2 years of playing at Alabama. That's a big deal. JoJo Earl is another kid who TCU was so close to getting away from Alabama, a couple years ago as well. But you're going to lose Quentin Johnson to the draft. You're probably losing Darius Davis already committed to the Senior Bowl, so you're losing him, and Tay Barber as well. You needed a sure-handed guy who can play in the slot, who's got speed, who's an excellent route runner, and can also help you in the return game if needed. He was a perfect fit and a guy that TCU staff was very familiar with from being a local kid. And then Avery Helm is a big corner, and Joe Gillespie wants these big cornerbacks. And so that was a win, a surprise. I don't think a lot of people saw coming. And of course, Jack Beck, he has a chance, I think, to, that kid as a freshman led LSU in receiving as a true freshman, dealt with some injuries, looking for a fresh start. He has a chance, I think, in this offense to be a really, really elite player for TCU. I think kind of what we all wanted to see from Jared Wiley, who will be back. Jack Beck brings, he's not 6'7" like Wiley is, so he can play a little bit more, I think, as a wide receiver, H-back type role. He has a chance to be really, really fun in this offense. And again, when you lose a player that's going to be a first-round draft pick like Quentin Johnson, who hasn't announced yet, but everybody just assumes that that's coming, and he should go pro 100%. Then yeah, I think that bringing in a Beck is going to be a great fit, I think, for both parties.
All right, I want to hit you up, of course, on the playoff game, and we cut a segment with Melissa. We also had her on our Michigan show, so check out those posts, and obviously check out Melissa's work at Frogs Today first and foremost. But I went nerd to the hill deep dive on comparison stats. So not just Michigan's total offense is this and TCU's total defense, but who did TCU play and what are their metrics to kind of back up their total defense, et cetera, et cetera. So the things that stand out to me here is that TCU's pass efficiency defense, their total numbers don't look great, but their pass efficiency defense is really good. And they faced 5 of the top 50 pass offenses in terms of pass efficiency in the country, and they still played extremely well.
Yeah, I think, and it's tough because you start talking to people, when I was on the Michigan show, I just kept kind of doing the sit back and smile because I know what you're going to say about the Big 12 guys. I get it. But when you go from the outside, you start to think, oh, all the Big 12 does is play offense, which is so far from the case anymore. I mean, these are solid teams on both sides of the ball. And again, if you really want to get down to it, a lot of the SEC started doing what the Big 12 was doing because they realized that's how you're going to win. You've got to be able to score points in modern football with the way the game's officiated, with what they want to see on TV. They want more offense. And so you are going to play these high level elite athletes, the athletes that come from places that you mentioned earlier. You're recruiting so many kids in Texas and Florida and California for these Big 12 schools. And so you do have these really high level high school players matriculating on to play in the Big 12 down the line. And so you're seeing this every single week. Even the worst team in the Big 12, well, Iowa State was the worst offense in the Big 12. We can't really bring them into this conversation, but even West Virginia could put 40 points on the board on any given day. I mean, these are teams that can really score. And so you're getting challenged week in and week out. And a lot of times those numbers in between the 20s don't look that great. You're going to give up chunks of yards. But TCU and Joe Gillespie were really good at two things: buttoning down in the red zone and making adjustments out of halftime. And they also got to the football. They swarmed the football in a way that created a lot of turnovers and a lot of problems for opponents as well. And so I think Josh Newton and Travius Hodges-Tomlinson were one of the more elite cornerback duos in the country. I don't know if you could call them best by any metric, but they certainly can hold their own, more than hold their own. And Michigan does have some issues with drops, and they don't really have that dominant wide receiver. And so I think that matchup to a degree does favor TCU. We're all going to be hoping that JJ McCarthy kind of reverts back to his early season turnover issues and his kind of gunslinger mentality to help TCU out. But yeah, I think that, and then when the safeties are healthy, and that was a huge issue, but when you can roll out your three top safeties, when you can have Miller Bradford and Bug Clark and Mark Perry and Abraham Kamara kind of rotating into those three spots, that's a really good unit that really kind of hits every possible skill set you would want in a safety between them. Mark Perry is excellent run support. You can imagine he's going to be playing a ton of time up at the line against Michigan. Abe Kamara is a human hit stick. And then Miller Bradford and Bud Clark have both just had exceptional seasons getting to the football, creating turnovers in coverage. Those are guys that can really play. And so as the ability to pressure the passer got better towards the end of the season, like I mentioned, with Dylan Horton, Demonic Williams, who started the season as a 17-year-old true freshman and really became a dominant player by the end of it, the more they can get to the quarterback, the easier it is on the secondary. And I think that was kind of all. They were starting to really roll within Joe Gillespie's defensive scheme towards the end of the season and playing really, really good football on that side of the ball. They're going to give up some yards. They're going to give up some points, but can they make big plays when that TCU offense needs it is going to be the question. And I think down the stretch, we really saw that they could. I mean, even in that loss to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, the secondary played pretty well the second half and helped kind of spur on that comeback for the Frogs.
And that's why I think it's going to be a great game, because I think if you listen too much to national media and we get these big matchups and everything gets dumbed down to, well, Michigan's too deep, they're too strong, they're too and they're just going to wear on TCU. And that could very well happen and probably will in some ways happen. But I think some of the TCU advantages are being discarded, that being one, both offensively and defensively in space. Not that Michigan doesn't have talent. They don't have speed on both sides of the ball in the secondary and a wide receiver, but they have been inconsistent. And like you say, they don't have a guy that they can count on as a wide receiver, first and foremost. And then flipping it around, you made this point, and I'm right there with you before when we talked about it, is outside of Peyton Thorne at Michigan State, Talia Tagovailoa at Maryland, those guys can move, but they're not runners. They don't threaten a defense as runners. They can just move. And that's about the best that Michigan has faced this year in terms of mobile quarterbacks. They haven't seen a guy that's basically the updated version of Tim Tebow, who's he's faster than anybody gives him credit for.
Yeah.
There were some plays in the Big 12 championship game when he beat defenders to the corner. He turned the corner. He's deceptively fast. Plus, he doesn't mind putting a shoulder down.
Well, and when you watch him run in that Oklahoma game and you watch him run in that Kansas State game, you can notice how banged up he was. This is the last time, potentially, hopefully not, but the last time Max Duggan's going to put on a TCU uniform. And he's going to be healthy for the first time in 2.5 months. I mean, this kid has been banged up. He's been gutting it out. So a healthy, fresh Max Duggan playing for his school potentially one last time, I think you're going to really see them take the governor off. He didn't run a lot down the stretch until that Kansas State game. I expect there to be quite a few design runs. He's not a kid who's going to want to dial it back because he's getting ready for the draft. That's not really his style. So I think it's going to be kind of kind of all systems go. And you're going to see him really try to attack that Michigan defense if they think there's a weakness. And like you said, the defensive line, the offensive line, there's nobody around TCU that has illusions that that's a good matchup for the Frogs on either side of the ball. Their defensive line is a lot bigger than our offensive line. Their offensive line is a lot bigger than our defensive line. That's the clear advantage. And so how do you kind of make that advantage a little bit less? And I think a running quarterback when you're on offense is the biggest way to kind of take away that pass rush. And there are not many running quarterbacks out there that can throw the way he could throw as well, better than Max Duggan. And that's why he was a Heisman finalist. I mean, that's why he finished second in the vote, is that he has an elite skill set, both in being able to run the ball, pass the ball, and an understanding of the offense that makes him a real danger. And so, yeah, Michigan has every advantage on paper, pretty much, if you want to look at it. But TCU has a lot of guys that played a lot of football and have played a lot of big football games and that are pretty fearless and pretty confident, and they're going to be healthy for the first time in a long time. I can remember all of the talking points leading up to the Mountain West TCU playing the Big Ten Rose Bowl, Wisconsin Rose Bowl team, and how that O-line was just going to wear those guys out too. And a lot of times coaches get into those situations and they think, well, I gotta score points. I gotta play with more speed that I'm comfortable with. And they ask their quarterbacks to do things that maybe aren't their best skill set, and things happen. And so TCU cannot turn the ball over if they can stay true to who they are, if they can just kind of rise up to the moment, which we've seen them do time and time again. Then there's no reason this isn't going to be a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. Now, all of that could go away and the moment could be too big and the pressure could be on them. I haven't seen that from this program this year, but I think we're looking for a really, really entertaining football game. I think TCU will be able to score, and if they can get a couple of stops and control the run game the way they did Bijan Robinson at Texas in front of 100,000 people on College game day, then sure. I mean, anything can happen. I'm not going down there not thinking the Frogs don't have a chance to win, but I'd be crazy to think they were going to roll.
We just dropped the link, everyone, to Frogs Today. They're in the chat, so please join Melissa and everybody else there at Frogs Today. Anything in particular people should be looking out for there?
Yeah, there's going to be, I mean, obviously we've got all of today covered, keeping that updated. There's going to be a great, I cannot tell you how many recruit packages I've been putting together over the last 2 days, but we've got footage and commentary on every guy that signs today. There'll be a great Frogs Today show dropping later this evening if you want to know everything TCU recruiting. Awesome.
Melissa, thanks so much for giving us time and stopping by. You got a lot going on. So
yeah. Thanks for having me. Happy early signing period to all who celebrate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Melissa. We'll see you.
Bye.
All right. Good stuff from Melissa Treebwasser, Frogs Today, TCU, Michigan. Of course, coming up here on New Year's Eve. I am not Melissa. I am Mark. I had to look for the correct banner, and we see that you have just let us know, everyone, that Matayo Uiagalelei has signed with Oregon. So let's give that a look. Big get for Dan Lanning and company. I doubt if I'm going to be able to pull up his chart because, shoot, I can't spell his name. Good Lord. Yes, I was looking for his recruiting profile. I can't even find it because I can't spell his name. Let's see if we can find it over here. So this is a big one. This is one of the bigger news updates of the day, of course. There we go. Matayo. There it is. That's why I was misspelling it. Matayo out of St. John Bosco, Oregon. Okay. Let's do the profile here. Please join the show. We're going to take a bit of a break here, and we're going to come back with our 2 p.m. show, and you'll want to join us between 2 and 5 because we are going to have tons of beat writers coming on, breaking down all sorts of teams. But in the meantime, check out this guy. Matayo Uiagalelei, like his brother, out of St. John Bosco. The second-rated edge rusher. So we're talking basically another Kayvon Thibodeau going to Oregon, 17th rated nationally. So he is rarefied air. There's only 35 to 45 stars available. He also had just visited Ohio State and USC, but he is going to be an Oregon Duck, at least to start out his career, of course. What we get after that, who knows? God only knows where these guys are headed after that. But with all the transfer portal activity, keep in mind that when you look at the top end players, like a guy like this, they're not moving. They're not moving much at all. If you look at the transfer portal rankings, yes, some very important key pieces to teams are moving, but not the high-end, top-end, top-of-the-rung players. You know, your current C.J. Strouds, Bryce Youngs, Bijan Robinsons, Brian Brissy, those guys aren't moving around. It's not happening. So a lot through the transfer portal, a lot of important moves through the transfer portal, but not the high-end, top-end guys. But yes, this is a big land for Dan Lanning. And yes, Sports Talk 101, we do see that Karmello English has signed with Michigan, and we have talked about that earlier. All right. Folks, we are going to shut it down for about 90 minutes, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And we have for you coming up at 2 Eastern, just to name a few, we have National Signing Day reports coming up today, either from 2 to 5 Eastern or on our 8:30 show coming in from Notre Dame, Oregon, Kentucky, Minnesota, Wake Forest, North Carolina State, Auburn, Nebraska, Alabama, North Carolina, Clemson, LSU, South Carolina, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, and hopefully others. So we appreciate y'all being here. We're going to shut it down for just a few minutes. We'll be back in 90 by 2 o'clock Eastern time, and we've got a slew of information for you, National Signing Day reports, and you guys are our producers and stringers as well. So I'm one guy trying to do everything at the same time and bringing in all these guests. If you've got any updates for us, if you've got any breaking news that you've come across or any interesting nuggets out there, certainly throw them our way here at the Voice of College Football. Otherwise, I will see you at 2 Eastern, 2 to 5 Eastern, and be on board with all the notifications to know when we go live so you can keep updated and be here when we are here, which again, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see you all then.